All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Taryn Hunt. Excited to be back again with another great episode for you. Going to try and keep this intro short, but on today's podcast, we talk about some of the new changes with the Pope and Young. I talked with Jason over there at the Pope and Young, and they've got some pretty cool stuff going on. If you're a bow hunter or really hunter in general, you know the Pope and Young, the records that they have on there, and you know that's what we all kind of strive to do, is be part of that club. But there are some cool changes that allow us to do that without killing these monster animals, which still hope to do. But a lot of cool changes with the Pope and Young Club, so stay tuned for that. Jason shares some awesome information with us. Also, before I get to the podcast, you guys remember, check out vortexoptics.com. We appreciate them, their support. They sponsor everything that we do here at eHunter, so we're grateful for them. Appreciate all that they do for us. And with that, guys, without further ado, let's jump into this podcast. Hope you guys enjoy. Leave us some comments. Make sure you're subscribed and like the podcast. Thanks, guys. Well, man, I appreciate you doing this. I don't know what your availability and time looks like, but I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you doing this.
Hey, absolutely. You know what? We're out there and we're working for bow hunters, and if nobody knows about it because you guys aren't talking about it, then nobody knows about it.
Exactly.
And so this is important for us, and it's important for me because we want to get our message out. I feel we've had a good message for a long time, and now we've renewed and refocused, and I like where we're going, and it's good. You know, we need you guys to help get the word out. So I appreciate you taking some time for us.
Yeah, well, I like where you're going too. I mean, the Pope and Young, the name itself has always had like this, you know, grandiose, which it is. I mean, you guys are amazing, but I love the different avenue that you guys are taking and kind of just changing things up a little bit. You know, that's the world in which we live. We've got to adjust to the world, and we have to make changes, and I'm excited to see that you guys are doing that as well. So as I read through, you know, the different changes that you guys are proposing and doing, I was like, man, this is cool. These guys get it. These guys understand bow hunting.
Well, that, and you know, we work on bow hunters' behalf all the time, but nobody knows about it. And
yeah.
if nobody knows about it, it just doesn't exist, you know, to the general public. So here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it, and you know, we're just welcome aboard. We'd love to have you. That kind of thing.
That's so cool, man. That is so cool. Well, let's jump into it a little bit.
You bet.
So, I guess just real quickly, you know, there may be people out there that don't know you, Jason. So, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind kicking us off with a little introduction? Tell us about who you are and what you do over there.
Absolutely, Jason Rounsaville. I'm the executive director of the Pope and Young Club. So, we have. I work with the board of directors and the staff to make sure operations is going and we're headed in the right direction. So I've got a really good staff in Chatfield and scattered across the country, and board of directors from literally all over the country, from coast to coast. So we're out there looking out for bow hunters, whether you realize it or not.
Nice. Yes, you are, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of your team. I've been a fan, I'm gonna say, of Pope and Young for a very long time, and just, you know, I think when a lot of people think of Pope and Young, they think of the records, obviously.
Yes.
And so, you know, that's the first thing we go to, and I'm gonna say it. That's the first thing I go to. I'm like, I want to see the Pope and Young records for this year. But actually, Jason, if you wouldn't mind, there may be people that don't know what Pope and Young is. I hope most everybody listens to this podcast do, but for those that don't, would you mind kind of just talking about the Pope and Young and what you guys do?
Absolutely, and it's interesting because when you, just like you said, when you hear Pope and Young, you instantly think of the records, and so that's how I was introduced to it. You know, a buddy of mine shot a Pope and Young antelope, you know, years ago, and he was happy for that. And then he got a Pope and Young bear, and he's like, next one up, you know, here's my goal to get a Pope. So the records are that's kind of the heart and soul of Pope and Young. We were founded with the records program basically to promote bow hunting all across North America. You know, we were instrumental in getting a season started in Wisconsin, instrumental in getting the season started, and, you know, all across the state. our records, because people look down on bows. They're like, it's a stick and a string. It's not really a hunting weapon. And that's what the records were created for, is showing people that this is a legitimate way of taking big game. So obviously we have the records. On top of that, we do quite a bit more. Our new 3 pillars that we just brought out at convention, it is preserve, promote, and protect. So for us, we preserve bow hunting. We have the records program, which does exactly that. We have one of the largest databases for harvest records in the world. And so we share that with fish and game agencies and research folks. And so that's something that we use. We're also using that even across the world. We're trying to work, I believe it's in Greenland, where they have bow hunting, but they do not allow traditional archery equipment. So we're actually working with them, with the records to say, hey, here are, you're talking about muskox. Well, here are, 5,200 muskox that we're taking with a bow. And here's something you might consider with opening it up to traditional archery. So we're still doing that. We also have the National Bow Hunting Museum. Super exciting. So that's part of what we're doing to preserve history. And then on the promotion, we're out there basically promoting bow hunting wherever we can. We've got the podcast. We've got a lot of partners. We work with S3DA and pretty much anywhere we have an opportunity to get out in front of bow hunters. That's kind of what we're doing. We have a conservation mission that goes along with that. I know we funded some research for migration corridors and things like that. We have a voice on the North American Wildlife Council. So if you look at, professional organizations, we're the only bow hunting organization sitting at the table with some of the other ones. You've got U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, you've got state wildlife agencies, some of the big conservation groups, and then here we are representing bow hunters. And so that's a lot about what we do. We want to be the voice of today's bow hunter.
That's awesome, man. And that, I love that, because another way that I've looked at the Pope and Young is almost like the NRA of bow hunters, like really helping protect and preserve what we love to do as bow hunters. And, it's been kind of exciting. I feel like in the last probably 5 to 10 years, bow hunting has taken on a different look, from the likes of Cameron Haynes and John Dudley and even, Joe Rogan. I feel like bow hunting has been kind of painted in a different picture over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's kind of the cool thing to do. There's those total archery challenges out there. There's the Mountain Archery Fest. I mean, all these different kind of 3D shoots and hunting shoots and whatever you want to call them. And I feel like we've gained some traction. Do you feel the same way?
I really do. And you mentioned a couple great events there with the Total Archery Challenge. I mean, those guys run some monster events. Definitely having an impact in the sport. Mountain Archery Festival, I mean, those guys are all about family and fun on the mountain. In fact, they run the Pope and Young World Record course at each one of their Mountain Archery Festival shoots. You get a chance to go shoot all 29 world record animals. It's pretty cool. But I agree with you. It's I mean, when you look at it, it's one of those things where I think, especially with some of the younger folks, the challenge and putting yourself on a level playing field with your quarry, I think just really resonates with a lot of people. And at Pope and Young, I mean, I've got guys who, for me, I do it all. I shotgun, rifle, bow.
Right.
I like to hunt, but I've got some of our guys. I mean, they're just bow hunters, and that's impressive to me. I had one guy won a bighorn hunt, and this is like a $70,000 hunt. And the guy walks up there and he says, "Oh man, this is great. This is the last one I need for my slam. I'm the, board member of Pope and Young." And the guy said, well, gee, we don't take bow hunters. and he hands it back to the guy, and the guy just about fell over. I mean, guy tells me, no, you're gonna have to use a rifle. I'd be like, you're great, pick your caliber, I got them all.
Yep.
And no, Dallas handed it back to him. He says, well, it's I really want to do it with the bow. And the guy's like, but this is like $70,000 hunt. And he says, I know, but it just, maybe we'll auction off, make some money for charity. And the guy's literally like had to have help picking his but that's how these guys do it. They're like, I don't just want to go out and shoot something. I want the challenge of doing it with the bow. I don't want to see how far I can shoot. I want to see how close I can get. And it's a whole nother level. And guys, you talk about hunting, and I've said it before on our podcast. It's there have been times where, elk hunting will say, you're at 100 yards, and with the rifle, it's game over. I mean,
right.
it's this thing's down, you're moving on. With a bow, you're at 100 yards. You may just be at the beginning of that game. You may just be getting into the game, or at 100 yards going the wrong way, you may be completely out of the game.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting there going, man, I see 165 head of elk. They're at 100 yards, and there is nothing that you can do to close that distance or head them up. You're out of the game. And it's the things that you see in that last 40, 50, 60, 70 yards. I think when you start talking to bow hunters and when you talk to the guys who are just really into it, it's that getting to know those animals on a more, intimate and personal level. Because, if you pull the trigger at 100 yards, you're not sitting around watching the interactions and watching what they do.
Right. So
now you've got another, 60, 70 yards of closing that distance, and you get to see them and you get to hear them and you get, even smell them. And it's a different experience. It's a more intuitive, immersive experience.
I love that you had used the word intimate, because I always use that to explain bow hunting, and I don't know if it's the right word, but man, it just fits so well, because you're right with and I'm the same way. I'll do rifle, muzzleloader, whatever I can get a tag for. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's just something about archery that I shot an elk once, a bull elk, at 5 feet. I mean, that is. There is no other rush. There is no other absolute excitement that comes with that. I mean, it was absolutely unreal. And the only way I can explain it is intimate. It was just, I could, smell him, see him, hear him. I mean, you could see, at literally 5 feet, he walked around the tree as I was standing behind the tree. And I mean, I didn't even have to pick a pin. I just basically put, the sight on him and let it fly. And it was an awesome shot. But it was just so amazing. And don't get me wrong. I love rifle hunting. I've had some amazing. In fact, I've killed the biggest animals I've killed with a rifle. But it's just a different game in archery. It's amazing.
It is, and that's the thing with Pope and Young. I think for years and years, people thought, oh, they're just a bunch of elitists. They're just, all this. And in some cases, maybe we earned that bad press from saying the wrong thing. And we're not putting anything else down. We're not saying that you shouldn't rifle hunt, because I'm a rifle hunter.
Right.
We're not saying you shouldn't duck hunt or you shouldn't do this, because I do those too, and we do those. What we're saying is that we have a special respect for the people who choose to limit themselves to archery equipment, to make it harder, to get closer, and to close the deal with archery equipment. We're nothing against anybody else. We're all hunters. We're all in this together, but we have a special respect for those people who choose to make it harder, to up the challenge.
Well, and going back to your, like getting the slam, the sheep slam, like I want to do that at some point, but honestly, where I'm at right now, I'll shoot it with any weapon I can shoot it with. But that would be kind of cool. Don't get me wrong, and I kind of get where he's coming from as well. Like to say, I did the slam with archery. Like when you tell somebody that, when you're telling the story of those 4 animals up on the wall, I mean, it does come across a little bit differently when you say, yeah, I killed all those with my bow rather than I just killed all 4 of those. That it does bring a little bit of a different aspect to it.
It does. I mean, I've had, we're in the business, so we're talking to hunters all the time, and I've talked to guys, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm on my third sheep slam, and you're like, oh man, must be nice to be rich,
Yeah.
Because that's one of those things. If you've got enough money, you can go do it. If you do it with a bow, money or not, you still have to earn it.
Yep.
Because you're not cracking them from 600 yards away with a 7 mag. You're getting 30, 40 yards from these animals up where they live.
Exactly.
And it's a whole different thing. It's like when I hear somebody who says, "Oh, I've done a sheep slam with a bow," I'm like, that's pretty legit, because I look at it and I would love to do it. I would love to go sheep hunting. I'd love to try it with a bow, but man, you start looking, when you're sheep hunting, you got to run up the mountain, and if you can shoot 150 yards, then you have to run up the mountain once.
Yep.
If you run up the mountain, you're 150 yards with the bow, you might as well be next November. You're not getting that done. So now you got to go down the mountain, back up the mountain again, and hope they're close enough. So it's a different thing, and I'll tell you what, it gets my respect, that's for sure.
Oh, it does mine too. And every time I look at when those records get released, and you see the Pope and Young records every year, that's the thing, is I look at those with a different respect than I do probably any other record, because like you said, those guys and gals earned every single one of those animals. Yeah, they may have the money to go do those hunts and blah, or just flat out lucky and got tags to go do those hunts, whatever, but they still earned every single one of those animals, and you have to take your hat off to them, because it's not easy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. And it's just interesting, and talking to some of the people, even when I was up at the Mountain Archery Festival a few weeks ago in Idaho, here coming down the hill, I recognize this guy named Steve Felix. Here's a guy who holds a world record elk. And so he's up there. He just got off shooting the Pope and Young course. And he's like, he said it was great to shoot it this time, but he said it wasn't as good as the first time. And you start talking, and then you get into, his story. And here's a guy, I think he works for the county, got off work, had been kind of having a bummer day. And he's like, just be easier not to go hunting. He said, but you know what? I need to go. So he pulled himself up, zoomed up the hill. Next thing you know, gets into this elk. It's a tremendous story. Obviously plays everything right and makes the right decisions, but he gets a world record elk, which is just, things like that. And this is a public land, DIY, 100%, it could have been me.
Yeah.
But, it's just, and I love those stories. It's pretty neat. And then you've got guys, Frank Naska, he's working on his third 29 slam with a bow.
Wow.
I can't even fathom how cool that is.
I'd like to just do one. Not even talk about the third. I'd just like to do one.
Yeah, like last week I saw some story about people, taking a space ship, up. No, Jeff, the Amazon guy, went up and
Bezos,
took his ship. And so he goes, and I'm like, you know what? I could do that. I could strap into a chair and I could do that. And then I look at somebody shooting 29 with a bow, and I'm like, I don't have any idea how you would do that.
No.
It's just another level. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those things that it's just, I can't imagine how much it takes to do that.
It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of everything to do something like that. My hat's off. My hat's off to guys like that. Holy cow. Hey,
it's...
You'd mentioned the convention that you guys had recently. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that and let the folks know, like, what do you guys do at those conventions? How often are they? Can you talk just a little bit about those?
Absolutely, love to. It's definitely fresh in our minds. It was just a couple weeks ago in Reno, Nevada, and we do them every 2 years. And one of the main things of these conventions is the awards for the biennium. So every 2 years, we do a set of records for the animals submitted in that 2-year period. So we recognize, the top cougar and the top elk and so on and so forth. So people have to send these trophies in to get panel measured, which is just verifying the initial score. And when they do that, we have the trophies. In this case, it was over 120 of the biggest animals taken with a bow and arrow. And so clearly you have something like that, you have to put them on display.
Oh yeah.
And when you walked into this banquet hall, it was 3 full sides of this, and this is a big banquet hall. It's seating for 1,000 people, and all the way around 3 sides of this room, we've got this black pipe and drape, for the contrast, and then the trophies of every. I mean, you mentioned it, elk. We had huge elk, moose, bears, muskox. Luke Brewster's new world record whitetail. Brian Butcher's that tremendous buck that he shot. Just all of these just crazy trophies. And you're just walking around and you're just like, man, if you had to pick one, how do you walk into a room with 120 some just phenomenal trophy? How do you pick one?
Oh man, you can't, honestly.
No. I mean, I don't even want to pick one out of each section. It's just, so anyway, that's a lot of it. It's the animal display and it's the awards. And then we have vendors. We typically have, 80 to 100 vendors. And ours are definitely, you're not going to see the ShamWow and the, rice pillows or whatever. Ours are there for bow hunters. We have outfitters that are typically partners of ours. They cater to bow hunting. They do the other as well, but there's a difference in outfitters between the ones who specialize in bow hunting and the ones who just kind of do bow hunting on the side. It's a different mindset. It's a different way of doing things. And so we have those folks that specialize in bow hunting. So that's really nice because you get to go and talk to some of those guys and you get to get the nitty gritty, hey, what are my chances of killing something like I see in that room? Some of them will tell you, we're not in the area. The other ones are like, there's a reasonable shot. And so the outfitters are great to talk to because we've vetted them. They're not some fly by night that's going to be gone tomorrow. These are legitimate, top of the industry professionals. We also have a lot of the gear that you want to see, Kuiu, Sitka, Hoyt Archery. A lot of the top brands in the outdoor industry are there. And so, it gives you an opportunity to come try their stuff out and talk to the professionals and see, what they have now, what may be coming out, and just ask the questions. Hey, if I had to have one jacket, what's your take on the one I should have? Mm-hmm. And, here's where I hunt. And so a lot of the displays are great. And then one of the highlights that it's frustrating because we have these literally world-class presenters, and I always seem to be too busy to ever go to any of the seminars. But I mean, we literally have people like, we'll have Chuck Adams talking about how to shoot mule deer, which, I mean, if it can get better than that, I don't know how.
Yeah, I can't.
We have, Frank Naska typically does a seminar for us every year, either DIY Alaska or how to do this, or, I mean, just so you're literally hearing it from the best in the entire world. I mean, here are guys who they don't, not somebody sitting at home behind his computer screen being an internet expert.
Right.
These are guys, they're legitimate professionals. This year we had one of our new partners, Baku Bikes. They had a tri-area convention, and then he was doing a seminar on how to pick a bike and how to use it in the backcountry. And, that's a new tool that is kind of gaining some traction. So a lot of things like that, just, broadhead choice, how to pick the right bow, just anything like that. And I know the hunting ones are typically some of the ones that are really interesting for me. How to choose an outfitter. John Fossil did a thing this year, it was hunting dangerous game. and he focused on Africa, and he likes the big cats and the Cape buffalo and all the stuff that I don't want to get 30 yards from. That's his thing. It's yeah, some things I like to get close to. The big ones, man, I just don't know. A brown bear or a lion, that's 30 yards pretty close.
They can stay their distance. I'll shoot them with a gun.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. It's funny you say that, because we had in Omaha 2 years ago in 19, we had Don Trump Jr. was our speaker that year. And he's a great guy, loves to hunt. And so he had actually come to our convention, was a speaker. I got to hang out with him, and we were talking, and two of the guys at that table were going bear hunting almost from convention. One of the guys was leaving from convention. That was Alan. He was literally going on a bear hunt the next day. And Don was getting ready to go. And I said, "Hey, are you going to do it with the bow?" And he's like, "No way, man. I don't want to be that close." And I'm like, I don't blame you, because I wouldn't either. I'm the Pope and Young guy. I'm supposed to say, "Oh, I'd love that." And I'm like, man, deer, absolutely. Elk, oh yeah. Black bear, brown bear, ugh. Man, they can turn your car over. I don't know if I want to mess with that.
Yeah, there's some animals that I'd like to hunt at a distance.
Yeah.
But I guess
I don't blame you.
But you're right. There's those guys though that are just die hard, and a lot of members of the club. Honestly, that's what they do. Yeah. And so if they're gonna go hunt something, they don't even think about taking a gun. So, I love that you refer to you guys' events as conventions, because there are a lot of people. I mean, I guess it is kind of a banquet too, but I feel like your guys' conventions are a whole lot more than just like a banquet. I almost think of it more of like an expo, to be completely honest with you, with the vendors and the seminars and the events and awards and things like that. It's there's a lot going on at those conventions.
It is, and we start on a Wednesday. Typically, we'll have a kickoff, welcome party, and it's, I think if I could sum it up in one, and I've heard this from so many people, which is why I think the one thing that probably makes our convention special is you can literally be sitting next to a Chuck Adams or Jack Frost. Here's a guy ever do the 29 with a bow, and they're just guys that you could sit and have a conversation with.
Yeah,
they're not far removed, and they're asking you questions. I had one guy I was talking to, and he says, "Man, you'll never believe it. I met such and such," and he says he was asking me about my hunting, and he said. He said it didn't really dawn on me, and I walked away, and somebody says, "Was that so?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh my gosh, I was just talking to some legend, and he's asking me about my whitetail hunt in the backyard." But that's how these guys are. Yeah. They live it, and they love it. And you talk to them, and you're like, "Hey, here's a guy who's shot all 29 species and been all over the world. And, what hunt are you looking, what hunt do you have coming up that you're looking forward to?" And he's like, "You know what? I'm doing whitetail, in a backyard of my buddy's place here in 2 weeks. And that's my next hunt. I'm looking forward to my next hunt. That's the one." And here's guys who've been to, all these, Middle Eastern ibex hunts and all this stuff. And they're literally looking forward to a hunt, next Tuesday. So that's exciting to me, because they're just everyday Joes that just happen to be icons.
See, but that's a lesson to us, though. I mean, like I've got a caribou hunt coming up. I'm super excited about that. But honestly, I should be looking forward to my Colorado mule deer hunt that's coming up in a few months, and really focusing on that, and just be excited about every hunt. It doesn't matter, like you said, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Middle East or whether you're in Alaska or whether you're just in your neighbor's backyard. I mean, we should be excited about every single hunt we go on, because it honestly is a treat and a privilege that I worry that someday it'd be taken away from us. So we got to enjoy every minute that we can.
Absolutely, and it's for those of you who don't think it can happen, try going over and hunting in Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
It can happen.
It can happen, and kind of like what we started with, talking about you guys being the NRA of bow hunters, I appreciate what you guys do to help protect our rights, and I know that you guys do a lot, and you guys are kind of the voice for all of us as bow hunters out there. So I appreciate what you guys do.
We are, and we're trying to expand that role. That's actually our third pillar is to protect. And so, we're called on constantly to provide the feedback for bow hunting and, how it pertains to the, NACA or all these different federal level or state level legislation pieces. And so we're often the voice for bow hunters on those. And it makes it nice because if it's good for bow hunting, we're for it. And if it's not, we're not. It's very singleness of purpose. But I think that's one of those things that people don't realize we do. And we're looking to continue that and even expand it to where we're working. I know last year there was a thing that affected bow hunters with decoys. They were like, well, you shouldn't be able to use a bow-mounted decoy. Well, they didn't have brackets for guns, so it didn't apply to guns. It didn't apply to anything other than bows. And so, we came in and we said, hey, here's the deal. We're all about fair chase. This is our entire premise is fair chase bow hunting. And this fits well within our boundaries of fair chase. And, and we help those guys with that issue. And I think we're out there working more than people realize. And we want to continue to do that. And if there's an issue in your area that affects bow hunting that we need to know about it, I don't know that we're going to take the point on every one because we don't, that just takes a lot of resources, but we want to be involved. And where we need to take the point, then we'll take the point. But where we need to provide the backup and, the factual data set to support why it's a good or not a good way to do things, we can do that too. Last week we were on the phone with, what was it, PBS, talking about the New Jersey bear hunting ban.
Oh, yeah.
And, so we're in there talking to them and saying, hey, this is not a ballot box decision. This wildlife management, we have professional wildlife managers. Mm-hmm. Okay? You don't have professional wildlife managers and then let the guy from Subway Sandwich make the decisions. That's just exactly. I mean, you don't want me making your Subway sandwich, so why would you want him deciding your wildlife issue? It just doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, things like that, we're trying, and we really hope that bow hunting never comes under the pressure that firearms are under almost constantly. Right. But it is coming, and it's not a broad sweeping change. It's literally one piece at a time. Well, if we can just get rid of, the bow-mounted decoys, or if we can just get rid of bear hunting in New Jersey, or if we can just get rid of this. And so we're going to be there. And if you have something like that, let us know.
Well, like you said, look at other countries. I mean, if you don't think it can happen, look at other countries, because and they did it the exact same way. It's little by little, they chip away, and pretty soon, before you know it, you can't do any of it. So yeah. I appreciate that, and that was one of the messages that I really wanted to get out today, because I do know that that's what you all do at the Pope and Young, and I don't think that is put out there enough. Like I said, most people think of the records and things like that, but I think people need to understand that you guys do a whole lot more than just the record side of things. So, going back to that convention, there was a lot of information that was shared at your guys' last convention. That's kind of what led to me reaching out to you and saying, hey, we need to get this information out to the folks. So if you don't mind, can we chat about a few of the new changes that you guys announced, like the new logo and the changes to the membership requirements and things like that? Would you mind chatting a little bit about those?
Absolutely. Happy to talk, but we're excited about it, and I'm definitely happy to talk about it. So
I was just going to say, the first thing I kind of want to ask about is it. So I noticed, instead of it saying the Pope and Young Club, now it just says Pope and Young. Was that on purpose?
It is. That's intentional. We've been the Pope and Young Club for 60 years, and we're going to continue with that. But Club has, I think, 20 years ago, Club was a good thing. It was exclusionary, and I think in some cases was taken, maybe in my personal opinion, a little too far. And and we had members who were, actively keeping it small, in some cases for personal reasons. Well, we've realized that you're not going to be the voice of bow hunting if you're excluding people like that. So, now we're Pope and Young, and we want to include people, and we're trying, our board of directors is making very good decisions for the right reasons to make it, to include everyone we possibly can.
Nice. I think that, I don't know, club, I guess I get what you're saying is, yeah, it used to be like it'd be this exclusive thing where you can't let other people join, and I think a lot of people did feel like it was a little out of touch for them. They weren't huge bow hunters or didn't kill big animals, and so they felt like it was out of touch. And so I think making that change is probably a good move, and just kind of changes the outlook of the Pope and Young Club, or of Pope and Young, to those folks. You guys also changed the membership requirements, right? You kind of, I don't want to use the word relax, but I don't know any other a better word. So it seems like the requirements are a little bit more relaxed now.
Yeah, it's, once again, we're still a bow hunting organization. So, if you're not a bow hunter, if you're thinking about bow hunting, check us out. But we're for bow hunters. And so with that, once again, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was a club, and they're like, hey, we just want the very best of the best. We want the guy who's traveling all over the world. We want the guy who's, been to Alaska twice this year. And that was kind of their focus. And I understand why they did it that way. And at the time, it was the right thing to be. But we live in a much different world now. And now we need to be the voice for bow hunting. And so if you look at it, a couple of things. A lot of my board members, so the way our membership structure is, we have a couple levels. We have a general member, and that's for anybody out there. If you're a bow hunter or aspire to be a bow hunter, that's where you'd come in. And then once you've been around and reached some milestones, you can advance to a regular member. And that, in that case, you get voting rights for the Pope and Young Club. And so, general member, you just have to have an interest in bow hunting. To be a regular member, you have to be a general member. We've gone from, I think some of my board members, it took them about 17 or 18 years to advance from a general member to a regular member. That's a long time. That's a lifelong commitment. So we realized, there's not a lot of people who are going to make a commitment today for 17 years from now. So we relaxed that to 5 years. You need to be a member, a general member, for 5 years, and then you could advance to regular membership if you have, number one, attended a convention, because we want people who want to be part of the club. We don't just want somebody out there who doesn't participate. We want people who are active. Come visit with us, come talk to us, meet the people and meet the public and be active.
Yeah.
And then number two, it was always, you had to have a certain number of species and, 3 animals in the book and all these different things. So now you have to have taken 3 species, or you can have 1 species if 3 are in the book. So magic number is 3. Okay. And we did that because, once again, traditionally we were targeting those guys that hunted all over, and they were going to, Kansas for whitetails and over here for something else, and, Alaska for Dall sheep. And we were targeting the people who were actively hunting all over. And I think we missed out on some very accomplished bow hunters that maybe aren't into the travel. Mm-hmm. We've got guys who, they've got 20 whitetails in the books, and they've got some monsters. And now all of a sudden we're telling that guy, oh, well, you haven't killed enough number of species, so you can't be a regular member. And he's a very accomplished bow hunter. Yeah. So I think they realized that, you know what? Understand why we're that way. We're not saying they were wrong then. We're just saying for where we want to be now, we needed to make some adjustments. So now that guy that's got, 20 whitetails or 3 whitetails in the book, and that's the only thing he likes to hunt, wants to hunt. Hey, now we have a spot for them because we've recognized, hey, that individual is an accomplished bow hunter. That's who we're looking for.
Oh, that makes sense. That really does, because there are those guys that don't travel all over. But you're right. I mean, I live, in Utah, and there's those guys that have, tons of mule deer and elk on their wall, but that's pretty much all they have. They haven't traveled out to get a whitetail or travel to get a sheep or whatever. And so, that makes sense. And I think that's a cool move on your guys' part, for lack of better words. That's just, I don't know, that makes it more, I don't know, attainable, I guess is the right word, something that people can work towards.
Absolutely. I mean, we're trying to do that basically to make it more inclusive for everybody.
Yeah.
And, hey, once again, if you're not a bow hunter, we're probably not for you. But if you are, we are. We're the organization that we hope you support multiple organizations, and we hope we're one of them.
Yeah.
We all need to give back, and you start looking at it, and hunters are the conservationists. We pay for all of the wildlife conservation that goes on in this country.
Exactly.
And if you don't think it's working, I had 10 new world records at convention last month.
Wow.
That would argue that the North American model of wildlife conservation is working splendidly.
It is definitely working. I think a lot of people get frustrated with some things, but it is definitely working. Wow, 10. That's a lot.
10. It's
unbelievable.
We've never had 10 before. That's just and even on those lines, we added a new Sitka non-typical blacktail category. We had hunters out there that were taking these, and we're like, once again, Pope and Young been a little slow to change because we'd rather have a slow change that we do right for the right reason than to make a quick change and then go, oops, we missed that mark.
Yeah.
So, so we added that. And then one of the things I'm very proud of is Roy Grace and his committee, and the whole board. Last year we added velvet. We've always had a velvet category, but it was never like a full membership, if you will. It was like, well, you shot a velvet buck and, it's cool, but it could never be a world record because it's just velvet. It was like second-class citizen stuff.
Right.
And, I'm a West Coast guy myself. I'm in Oregon. So, I mean, that early season stuff, there are people who just live for that first early season chasing those big velvet bucks, especially those mule deer. And so, I mean, that's another, it's no less than somebody shooting, one in November. And I think it finally got through that, this is something, it's a legitimate deal. There's hardcore guys that just specialize in this. And, there's people out there taking tremendous trophies. So we need to recognize it as a full category. So now we have full velvet categories for each species that you can take in velvet.
Man, that's awesome, because I love taking animals in the velvet. I just think it's cool. They just look so big, so heavy horned.
Oh, yeah.
They look so cool.
Yeah, and so and I agree. I mean, it's like, hey, we want to be inclusive, and if there's somebody out there, there's some gal who shoots a giant, mule deer or blacktail or whatever it is in velvet, we need to recognize that, and we need to appreciate that. And it seems like it just doesn't seem, if you're listening, it doesn't seem like a major paradigm shift to start recognizing this. But in Pope and Young, this was you wouldn't believe that hours and hours of discussions that went into this. And there's very legitimate ones for how it was, and there's very legitimate ones for how it is now. And I believe that for the right decisions were made for the right reasons to put us where we are and where we need to be, which is fully recognizing these velvet categories.
Did you guys make any changes to like accessories to bows, like sights and things like that? Or, and I'm sure not on this one, but like crossbows, I'm pretty sure crossbows probably still aren't a category, but did you guys make any other changes that way?
You know, crossbows are not a category, and you know, now that they have their own, that's been, man, I don't know how many hours I spent talking about that. And you know, the nice thing is now that crossbows have their own record book, you know, now it's just like, you know, the rifles, the muzzleloaders, the crossbows, we all have our own record book. And now even they've, you know, by creating their own book, they've said, hey, we understand we're a different weapon. And that's great.
That is great.
You know, so and we wish them all the best. You know, if our measures want to measure for them, they're more than welcome to. We don't we let them make a personal choice on that. So but no, other equipment stuff, we are constantly evaluating our equipment regulations, and we're kind of right on that line. Fair chase is what we're all about.
Right.
And so we're trying to balance the fair chase with where we have always been and where we believe it should be, with some of the new equipment coming out and some of the new things. And so once again, we want to make the right decision, even if it takes longer. But we're looking at a lot of equipment things. I know, a couple of years ago we eliminated the overall bow minimum length. You know, I still hear about the let-off percentage. That hasn't been an issue for, I don't know, 15 years or more.
Yeah, that was a while ago. I remember that one.
Yeah, but there's still people that are, you know, upset with the club over that.
Oh, geez.
And it's been gone for, you know, a couple of decades now. So other things that they're looking at are coming up. You know, lighted sight pins or something that pops up. And so we have some pretty good discussions on here's our take for why that might be, you know, included. Here's why maybe it shouldn't be. And so those are ongoing discussions with all kinds of equipment categories. I mean, you know, if you look back, it's funny because people think of Pope and Young, oh, well, they're a bunch of trad guys, you know, they're shooting recurves and long bows and we've got some guys who that's their thing, that's their choice, and man, great, more power to you.
Good on them.
It's not me. I mean, I've got, you know, the latest greatest compound I can get my hands on because I need that to be, you know, to be active in this archery world. But when you look back, you know, even though our people kind of think of us as the trad guys, when you look at Pope and Young and you know, all of the guys who pioneered bow hunting, Fred Bear was an instrumental member of Pope and Young. Well, Fred Bear used the latest technology available to him at the time to be successful in the field. So he wasn't about limiting himself. He was about expanding those possibilities, you know, and I think that's a shift for us, is that, hey, you know what? These guys did take advantage of technological advancements as they came available, and we need to take a look at that as well.
Yeah, if he could have used a Matthews VXR or a Hoyt RX5 or whatever, he would have used it. Wasn't at his fingertips.
That's the thing. Absolutely, yeah. And these guys, you know, I mean, you know, we look at them now as icons and as legends for bow hunting.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at Pope and Young and Fred Bear and some of these guys, I mean, they forged what we have today for bow hunting. However, at the time, they weren't legends. They were just bow hunters, man.
Yeah.
They just wanted to get more time in the field.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, they just used what they had, and they just wanted to be out and enjoying what we enjoy doing. They didn't really, worry too much about the semantics that go along with it. So, hey, what about like lighted knocks? Can you use a lighted knock and still qualify for Pope and Young?
Absolutely.
Okay. There was a couple
Yeah.
of those.
Thank goodness, because I'm blind. So if I can't see those lighted knocks help me. It doesn't change where I hit, but it allows me to see, and get a better view for where I made that hit.
Yeah, I just worry about there's a lot of this technology coming out, like the breadcrumbs, that knock that basically has like a GPS tracker in it that it'll follow it for you, and I worry about some of this technology that's coming out, thinking, is this still going to be cool, or is it going to, if I shot one with that, is it still going to qualify? So I worry about a lot of those things.
Yeah, and that one right now would not qualify for Pope and Young. Same thing. And our friends over at Garmin, Garmin's a corporate partner of ours, and one of the things that they talk about is they have a laser range-finding bow sight.
Yeah.
And when we talk to our guys over there, I'm like, guys, we want you at convention. We want you to be there, and you can display, because we're using their handhelds, their communication tool. There's a lot of Garmin products that people use, and I said that's just the one right now that's just not approved. Yeah. And they're like, well, it's hard to change it from the outside, so we like what you guys are doing for hunting and bow hunting, so they're on as corporate partners, even though we don't allow their sites in our books. Yeah. And that's, I throw that out to a lot of guys. It's like, hey, you know what, you don't agree with 100% of what we do, but do you believe in the overall premise of preserving, promoting, and protecting bow hunting? Well, yeah. Well, then you should think about being a member.
Yeah. What's the best way for people to stay up to speed with those kind of changes at Pope and Young? Is conventions the best way? Become a member, just getting those emails. What's kind of the best way to stay up to speed with all that?
We have a web. We're in the process of redoing it, but our website has a lot of the most up-to-date information, and that's just popeyoung.org. That's a good way. Everything that we do is typically published in our magazine. We have a quarterly magazine. Mm-hmm. It's called The Ethic. If that tells you anything about how much we believe in fair chase and ethics in hunting. So that's probably the very best way, and that goes out to all of our members 4 times a year.
I'm glad you put a plug in for the magazine, because that's where I feel like the best place to look at the pictures too. I mean, you can go on the website and see the different pictures too, but there's just something about grabbing the magazine and looking at the pictures.
I'll tell you what, I love it. In our magazine, I mean, I'll throw a shout out to Steve, our editor. This guy takes it as serious as anyone can take, and I love it. I get the magazine in the mail, and I flip through it, and it's something that I'm very proud of. I'm very proud to have my name associated with it. Yeah, it's just, it's great. I mean, it's got good information. It's got great stories, and I mean the trophies. I mean, you want to, and these aren't Facebook scores. These are legitimate. By the time they get to our magazine, this is a verified actual score. Yeah. So it's, if you see somebody says they've got a 165 Pope and Young buck, that is every bit as legitimate as the guy on Facebook with a 200 incher.
Yep.
all day, every day. Because I look at this, I'm like, man, I get a little bit, insecure maybe in my own bow hunting sometimes, because you flip through social media and I'm like, gosh, 752 people shot, 200-inch typical mule deer this year. And then you start looking, and I don't even think I think there's less than a dozen typical 200-inch mule deer in the books. And I'm like, this math is not right.
That's the world in which we live these days. This social media, you can kind of live whatever life you want on social media, and you can also shoot whatever size of animal you want to shoot on social media, I've decided.
Yeah. I'm like, and I get it. We've all we've all been there, and it just happened to me because I shot an antelope last year, and I was like, oh man, this thing's, that's probably 15 and a half inches, and I think it's, it'll score probably around 72, and then my director of records just happened to be passing through, and I said, hey, would you score this thing? I've got an antelope hunt coming up. I want to see what this thing scores, just so I make sure I find a good one, this year too. And so he came over, and it was like, 14 and something, and it just wasn't quite as big, and it netted out like just over 70 inches, and I'm like, that's not exact. So I understand why people don't, they don't want to get fact checked on scores, because you think it's a little bit bigger than it is, and I get that. But if somebody says, hey, if they say I shot a 200-inch buck and they've got a Pope and Young sheet right there with it,
oh well, yeah,
that's legit. If they say they got a 200-inch buck and they don't have that sheet, it's worth the paper it's printed on.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going to tell people that, if it's just you and your buddies in the backyard drinking beer, talking about it, yeah, I shot this 200-inch buck, okay, cool. But you're right. If you want to put it out there and put it in magazines or whatever, and want people to see it, hang it in expos and conventions, you kind of have to have that piece of paper that goes along with it, saying it legitimately is what it is, what you say it is.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting. I'm sure you get that too. Hey, look at this, 200-inch buck, and you're like, dude, 150 is a great buck.
Exactly, all the time. I've got buddies that'll call, hey, check it, like always during the hunt. Oh, check out this 200-inch deer, or this, 375 bull I shot. I'm like, that's, you and I have a different way of scoring an animal, I think.
Yeah, it's like, do you own a calculator?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, because they have them on your phone, so you just start there. And then the other thing is, the next time you're measuring an animal, use a tape measure.
Yeah.
It's a very convenient tool.
No, they just guess by, they just take their hand, like, oh, it's about that long, and so then you just measure it by hands, and it's this many hands, so it's got to be that many inches. Yeah. And oh man, that's a 250-inch deer. How about that?
Yeah. Hey, and I'll tell you what, for the measures out there, my hat's off to them, because the attention to detail and the meticulous nature to which these guys take this serious.
Oh yeah.
And it's not about, like, if you get a score and it's 142 and 5/8. It's not about 142 and 5/8. It is exactly 142 and 5/8. There's no about. It is exactly what it is. And those guys are, man, they're good at their job. And they, wow. It always impresses me to see those guys working.
It always impresses me because, me and my buddies, we can measure out an elk or a deer, and we'll get pretty close. We'll get within an inch, usually maybe 2 inches at the most, which is, for the most part, that's pretty good. But you're right, those guys, they're down to the eighth, and it is spot on, which absolutely amazes me because, these antlers aren't perfect. There's all sorts of different things going on with them. You can hit a bump, you can hit something, and it's a completely different score. But those guys, they are very meticulous in what they do, and I love watching them do it. It's something that I've always wanted to do, honestly. But man, those guys, there's just so much attention to detail when they're measuring them out there.
It's and here's a quality story along those lines. I don't know if you've seen the Brian Butcher buck. This thing, it's a 320-inch whitetail.
Yes,
but it's
I have seen that whitetail.
Freak of nature.
It's unreal.
And it's just this huge cluster of points. And this thing was originally scored, and to his credit, Brian found one of the best in the business to do the original score. And this guy, I don't even know how many hours it took him, but I was at panel in Reno in January, when we had 2 teams of 3 measures panel score this thing. And it took each of these teams over 8 hours each to measure this buck. Here's how good these guys are. On 320 inches of crazy horn, all 3 scores were within 1 inch.
Wow.
That just blows my mind. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, I finally got to meet him, and I just told him, I said, man, I said, you owe me $26, and he says, what for? And he said, I said, because, man, do you have any? I said, your buck caused so much grief for our measure. I said, man, I think you owe me $26 in masking tape for how much tape they had to use on that thing. It's just, and he just got to laugh. He's a great guy. I don't know if you met him, but phenomenal guy. Just a lot of fun. But it's oh man, that thing is just crazy.
I was say, I don't think people, unless if you're listening, you got to pull up the picture of that deer. In fact, I wish I could find it again, but I saw that deer, and it's just there's stuff everywhere on that thing.
Yeah.
Like, it would be so. I mean, oh man, it would be so tough to score that deer.
You know what? Here's a quick story on that. So I'm at convention a couple weeks ago, and I'd never met Brian, and I'd heard about the buck. I'd seen the antlers at panels, so I knew which one it was. And so I walk into the banquet hall, and I'm talking to somebody, and these three guys come up, and they're like, "Hey, are you Jason?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Man, we listen to your podcast. We love it, you know." And so I'm just glad that somebody's listening. So I'm visiting with these guys and cracking a couple jokes, and we're hanging out for a little bit, and we just happen to be standing by the whitetail section. And imagine, I don't know, probably 20 or 25 of the biggest whitetails you could imagine seeing. And they're all 2 feet from you. I mean, you could literally, if you wanted to, lean over the rope and touch these things. And so I'm like, okay, guys. And I, at this point in time, I didn't know who he was. Mm-hmm. It was just, some guys were at the convention. And I said, okay. I said, if you had to pick one, which one would you pick? And his one buddy's like, man, you'd have to think about the Brewster buck, because here's this brand new world record. Just, I mean, when you think of a trophy, true monster buck, this is what you think of. Mm-hmm. And he's got junk for days. So you look at that, and I'm like, what about one of these big typicals? Because we had some huge big typicals there. And the guy was like, yeah. And then Brian, who I didn't know was Brian at the time, he leans over and he says, I'd pick that one. And I'm like, really? And thank goodness I didn't say anything stupid, because I'm like, really? I said, do you have any idea how much grief that cost the measures, man? And his buddy kind of hits the elbow in the ribs. He says, that's Brian Butcher. And it's, like, joke's on me, because it was so much fun. But those guys are great.
Oh, man. And
we had a good laugh about that, but just, they set me up pretty good. I appreciated it.
As they should. Good on them.
As they should. And thank goodness I didn't say anything bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
But,
shoot. Well, Jason, are there any other changes that we didn't touch on? I didn't mean to skip over any. Is there anything else that you guys announced that's different that we ought to get out there to everybody?
I think just the renewed focus on those 3 pillars, preserve, promote, and protect. We're not changing everything completely. We're just, focusing there and committing to our members and bow hunters all across North America and the world that this is what we do. Yeah. And, I would invite everybody, come check us out and try a membership. And, if it's for you, we want you there. And if it's not for you, let us know why. Maybe there's something else out there we're not considering. But I can tell you that we are making good changes. And like I said, we're making them for the right reasons. Our board of directors truly cares about bow hunting. I mean, that's their core thing, and they do. And so we're trying really hard to be that frontline organization that we truly need right now.
You guys are doing a great job at it, honestly, and I'll put that plug out there as well. It doesn't cost very much to become a member either. If I remember right, I think it's only like $45. Yep. I think that's for an annual membership. I think if you purchase more years, it's a discounted price. But I agree, Jason, with you. I mean, if you're a bow hunter or you aspire to be a bow hunter, want to get into it, or excited to buy it, give it a try. I don't think again, it's not a lot of money out of your pocket to get into it. And there's also a lot of perks that come along with it. You're in the you get the emails, you get the magazines, you get all those things. You're in the know when it comes to bow hunting. And so, yeah, you might as well. I guess like that, for lack of better words, you might as well give it a try if you're a bow hunter or even want to be a bow hunter.
Yeah, I just challenge people, check it out. And if it's not for you, that's okay. But I mean, it's, I talk to people and they're like, well, I don't know what's the point. And I'm like, well, did you bow hunt last year? Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, truly, it's if bow hunting's what you do, or if it's your thing or one of your things, and you're not willing to toss $45 in the pot, to keep it going, same guy's dropping $1,500-$1,600 on a new bow doesn't have $45 to make sure he has a place to go use it.
Exactly. So
it's
less than half a dozen arrows. Just go do it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. By the time you get a broadhead and a luminoc and everything else, it's literally like one arrow.
Exactly. It really truly is. Yeah, it's definitely worth it. And it goes to. I mean, that's the thing. It goes to a lot of good things. So guys, yeah, if you're a bow hunter, or even if you're not, this is something that you're interested in, hunting in general, honestly, the money goes to a good cause, gets you in a good environment, helps support those three pillars, the preserve, promote, and protect. I mean, we love what we love, and we enjoy doing these things, and this stuff doesn't come free. It takes a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and a whole lot of time. I know the time that Jason and his crew put into all this, and we have to support them for them to be able to do this for us. So, we scratch their back, they scratch our back. It all comes full circle. So get involved, be into this. Jason, I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming on the Hunter podcast and sharing the new information. I'm glad that Pope and Young isn't changing too much, because I love what Pope and Young is and has been, but I also love that you guys are making some new changes. You guys got to kind of adjust to the times and things like that, so I appreciate you doing that, but I really appreciate more than anything just your focus on preserving what I love, so thank you.
Well, hey, thanks for having me on, and thanks for helping us get the word out for Pope and Young. Surely appreciate it.
My pleasure. Hopefully this isn't the last podcast we do together. Hopefully we get on and chat again in the future, and I'll reach out to you when that time comes.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Well, you have a good day, man.
You too. Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you, buddy. Bye.